from weak resignation to violence. Teach us that restraint is the highest expression of power, and thoughtfulness and tenderness are the mark of the strong. Help us to love our enemies, not by countenancing their sins, but remembering our own.
Church, we mark the passing of a member's life with a ritual of lighting a memorial candle. This morning, we honor Phil Dunham, our beloved brother and spiritual kin, who was the longest standing member of All Souls Church. Phil died on Thursday, November 10th, with his beloved wife Mary and their sons at his side. We will no longer share the touch of Phil's hand, nor hear the sound of his voice, or see his warm smile. Yet, through the memories we cherish, his special character lives on in our hearts. To honor Phil Dunham and to symbolize his enduring influence, we will now light a candle in his memory, and two of his sons are here along with Mary, Jeff, and Craig. Would you please come forward? In mystery we are born, in mystery we live, and in mystery we die.
My name is Carla Fogg, and on behalf of the board of All Souls Church, I extend a warm welcome to everyone. If you're joining us for the first time, I extend a special welcome to you. We look forward to getting to know you and invite you to stay after the service for refreshments and conversation. All Souls Church is a church where we deepen souls, enliven spirits, and stimulate minds. Ours is a covenantal faith. We share a covenant that expresses how we try to be together, not what we are expected to believe. We are united by shared values expressed in the 7 principles of Unitarian Universalism and in our All Souls covenant of right relations. We build our church on a foundation of love and covenant with one another, to freely explore our values and honor our diversity as a source of communal strength, to accept responsibility for our individual acts and promote justice and peace, to celebrate the joys of discovery, embracing the fullest measure of our humanity, to communicate with kindness and support, to serve with compassion and commitment, to openly share our laughter and tears, and to show reverence to the divine in all that is.
This song is a popular anti-war and anti-recruiting song that has become a definitive anti-war song. You will recognize it.
Going the road to sweet Athy, hurroo, hurroo. When going the road to sweet Athy, hurroo, hurroo. When going the road to sweet Athy, a stick in my hand and a drop in my eye, a doleful dance of I would cry, Johnny, I hardly ye. With your drums and guns and guns and drums, hurroo, hurroo. With your drums and guns and guns and drums, the enemy nearly slew you. Where are the legs with which you run? Where are the legs? Where are the legs? Where are the legs with which you run? With which you run? The legs with which you run. Where are the legs with which you run? When you went to carry us on your legs, your dancing days are done. Why, Johnny and Harvey, Johnny. With your drums and guns and drums and drums. With your drums and your guns and your guns and your drums. With your drums and guns and guns and drums. With your drums and your guns and your guns and your drums. With your drums and guns and guns and drums. The enemy nearly slew you. Johnny, you look so queer, like Johnny and Harvey, Johnny. Johnny, I'm happy for to see you. I'm happy for to see you. I'm happy for to see you. I'm from the island of Ceylon. So low in flesh, so high in bone. Johnny, I'm high in bone. Johnny, I'm high in bone. With your drums and your guns and your guns and your drums and your drums and your guns and your guns and your drums and your drums and your guns and your guns and your drums. Why, Johnny, you look so queer. Johnny, I hardly knew you.
We are constantly being bombarded with problems, with issues in the world, and it is so easy to get overwhelmed and to start feeling helpless. And the story of the hummingbird is that of a great forest that is being consumed by fire. And all of the animals come out of the forest, and they're standing transfixed by the flames. They're all feeling overwhelmed. They're all feeling totally powerless, except for the hummingbird. And the hummingbird says, I'm going to do something about this. And it goes to the nearest stream, and it picks up a drop of water, and it flies back to the fire, and it drops it on the fire. And it goes back to the stream and back to the fire, back and forth, back and forth. Meanwhile, all of the animals, the bigger animals, are standing there watching. The elephant, with its giant trunk, could fill with a lot of water, just stands there and watches. They look at the hummingbird and they say, what do you think you can do? You're so little. This fire is so big. Your wings are so little. And your beak so small. You can just get one drop of water and put it on the fire. And as they continued to discourage the hummingbird, she turned without a moment of delay. And she said, I'm doing the best that I can. And she continued to go back and forth, back and forth. And for me, I want to be like that hummingbird, continuing to do the best I can. You might feel insignificant. You might feel overwhelmed. You might feel helpless. But I don't want to be like those animals standing on the edge of the forest, watching as the world goes down the drain. I want to be like the hummingbird.
7 years ago, Darryl Pillsbury and I saw that there was, it was when the fuel prices were starting to make a very steep climb, and we felt that people were going to need a little extra help. So we said we'll try to help them out. What we started to do was to supplement existing programs. So if people didn't qualify for fuel assistance, federal, state programs, we would fill in the gaps. As the years have progressed, the gaps have gotten wider, problems gotten worse, and we also realized that it really doesn't have a lot to do with fuel prices. It has to do with bigger issues. It has to do with social justice issues like the unequal economy that we have. And no matter what the price of fuel, there's always going to be, and there is a growing segment of the population that is always going to be unable to afford to heat their homes. And it's very difficult to set priorities when you don't have the means to do so. So this year is the worst we've ever seen, even though the heating season is just starting. The stories that we're hearing from people are just horrendous, and people, our neighbors, our friends and our neighbors, who don't have any fuel, who are anticipating their fuel assistance check this year, which will probably be half of what it normally is, and sadly, that amount won't even be enough for them to get a minimum delivery from most fuel companies. So they're going to get money they can't even use until they supplement the money. So we've been helping those people. So and probably this year we've raised more money quickly than we ever have. We've raised almost a little over $19,000. We've actually given more than that away because one of the companies has given us a line of credit. 50 individuals and two organizations have provided grants. 50 individuals have made donations, and we so far have helped 42 people and families. But even if we try to reach our goal of $50,000, it's still going to be short of what the need is. So I appreciate whatever you can do for us. It'll probably save somebody's life. I mean, it's that simple. Thanks.
The first reading this morning is a poem by Mary Oliver. What is there beyond knowing that keeps calling to me? I can't turn in any direction, but it's there. I don't mean the leaves, grip and shine, or even the thrush's silk song, but the far-off fires, for example, of the stars, heaven slowly turning theater of light, or the wind playful with its breath, or time that's always rushing forward or standing still, in the same, what shall I say, moment? What I know I could put into a pack as if it were bread and cheese and carry it on one shoulder. Important and honorable, but so small. While everything else continues unexplained and unexplainable, how wonderful it is to follow a thought quietly to its logical end. I have done this a few times, but mostly I just stand in the dark field, in the middle of the world, breathing in and out. Life so far doesn't have any other name but breath and light and wind and rain. If there's a temple, I haven't found it yet. I simply go on drifting in the heaven of the grass and the weeds. In Anthony de Mello's collection of meditations, Taking Flight, he writes of a woman who was in a coma, dying.
She suddenly had a feeling that she was taken up to heaven and stood before the judgment seat. "Who are you?" a voice said to her.
I am the wife of the mayor, she replied.
"I did not ask you whose wife you were, but who you are."
I'm the mother of 4 children.
"I did not ask you whose mother you are, but who you are."
I'm a school teacher.
"I did not ask what your profession is, but who you are." And so it went. No matter what she replied, she did not seem to give a satisfactory answer to the question, "Who are you?"
I'm a Christian.
"I did not ask what your religion is, but who you are."
I'm the one who went to church every day and always helped the poor and needy.
"I did not ask what you did, but who you are." She evidently failed the examination, for she was sent back to Earth. When she recovered from her illness, she was determined to find out who she was, and that made all the difference.
Imagine that you are the woman in the Mellows meditation. My apologies to all the men, but try. Try imagining that you are the woman in the Mellows meditation. Suddenly, you are standing before the judgment seat. A voice asks, "Who are you?" How would you answer? How would you answer? Maybe you've already pondered who you are. Well, I have no doubt that you have. Who are you? 10 years after immigrating to this country, I woke up one morning and did not know who I was. I was young when I came here. I owned the world. It belonged to me, and I could do anything. The privileges of being 20. Although at first I tried to hold on to familiar things, my focus turned more and more toward managing a new language and a new culture. I wanted to be a good American. 10 years later, having lost myself, I had to ask, who am I? Who am I? The first answer came naturally, easily. I am Barbara. Speaking my name helped me remember. I began exploring the meaning and origin of my name. Barbaro, I learned, comes from a Greek word meaning foreign. Anyone who is not Greek. Who am I? I am Barbaro, the foreigner. What is your name? That is what Moses asked God many, many years ago. You know the story, right? Some of it, yes? And that's good enough. The story appears in Exodus chapter 3. Moses was minding his own business, tending the flock of his father-in-law, when he wandered upon Mount Horeb, also known as the mountain of God, which simply means it was a sacred place. An angel appeared to Moses in the fire of a burning bush. The angel, who was really a manifestation of God, told Moses to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. Moses, however, was not interested. But God, being God, prevailed. What else would God do? Yet Moses, being very reluctant, asked, "If I come to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your ancestors has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. He said further, thus you shall say to the Israelites, I am has sent you. Moses learned the true meaning of God's name. Might not be perfectly pronounced by my Swedish English, but it's close enough. Though commonly translated to I am who I am, according to the Jewish Study Bible, probably best translates as I will be what I will be, meaning my nature will become evident in my actions. Theologically speaking, to disclose, or maybe this is relationally speaking, both. To disclose one's name is to make oneself known to others. In a way, it is to hand oneself over by becoming accessible, capable of being known more intimately and addressed personally. So, now Moses knows God intimately. And Moses finally agrees. Moses and enter into covenant. From now on, they belong together. They belong to each other. You and I and all souls belong to each other too. Earlier in the service, we spoke together the covenant of All Souls Church, which is one part of the whole covenant of right relations. Its preamble states that we who have chosen to be part of All Souls Church affirm this covenant of right relations with its principles and guidelines, accepting it as a statement of how we, as a congregation, intend to support and work with each other to create a living, growing, and caring religious community. Each of us, it continues, is responsible for making and assisting each other in making good faith efforts to abide by this covenant in both letter and spirit. Now retired UU minister Alice Blair Wesley is an influential author best known for her exploration of covenantal theology in Unitarian Universalism. In her book, Redeeming Time, Wesley suggests that the pilgrims ought to be especially important to American Unitarian Universalists. The pilgrims are our spiritual ancestors. We misapprehend our own identity and miss out on a great richness if we do not understand our derivation from their extraordinary spirit. I believe, she continues, we could much diminish the fruitless and sterile individualism among us and instead foster together far richer varieties of authentic individuality in community. If we should, through the 17th century pilgrims, set about reclaiming for today a fresh, dynamic commitment to the spirit of the covenant of the free church. Just an aside, she writes run-on sentences. The center of the free church, she continues, the heart of the whole thing, is a promise of fidelity, a covenant, which each member freely makes upon joining. Actually, also, each member begins again with, or renews or negotiates his or her promise many times in the course of the life of the church, in the privacy of renewed conscience or spiritual growth. Too often, our promise or covenant is implicit, not consciously explicit. But it doesn't really matter whether it's verbalized. It matters whether it is faithfully meant. It matters whether it is faithfully meant. The question, who I am, or who are you, leads inward and focuses on the self. It involves answering questions about values, meaning, and purpose, but stresses the moral worth of the individual. In his book, Let Your Life Speak, Parker Palmer, a well-respected author, educator, and activist, writes about Quaker teacher Douglas Steere and how Steere was fond of saying that the ancient human question, who am I, leads inevitably to the equally important question, whose am I? For there is no selfhood outside of relationship. We must ask the question of selfhood and answer it as honestly as we can, no matter where it takes us. Only as we do so can we discover the community of our lives. My colleague, the Reverend Victoria Safford, expanded on Steere's thoughts in a sermon she preached a few years ago. To ask, whose am I, she said, is to extend the question far beyond the little self-absorbed self and wonder, who needs you? Who loves you? To whom are you accountable? To whom do you answer? Whose life is altered by your choices? With whose lives is your own all bound up, inextricably, in obvious or invisible ways? The question, whose am I, or whose are you, leads outward and focuses on relationships. Whose am I? I belong to my spouse. I belong to my parents. I belong to my sisters. I belong to my daughter. I belong to my grandson. I belong to my friends. I belong to you, to All Souls Church. I belong to the human race. I belong to that which is beyond knowing, that keeps calling to me. Yes, I wonder too, as Mary Oliver does in her poem, what is there beyond knowing that keeps calling to me? I can't turn in any direction, but it's there. Whose are you? Who needs you? Who loves you? To whom are you accountable? To whom do you answer? Whose life is altered by your choices? With whose life, whose lives, is your own all bound up inextricably in obvious or invisible ways? I invite you to ponder these questions here and now. And I invite you to take the insert with those questions printed on it with you when you leave. Put it in a special place where you will encounter it every day. And live into the question, whose are you? Whose are you? I want to share with you some words from Desmond Tutu. He is fond of quoting the South African word Ubuntu. To say Ubuntu is to say my humanity is caught up, is inextricably bound up in yours. A person is a person through other persons. I am human because I belong. I participate. I share. I am available, open, and affirming to others. A person with Ubuntu does not feel threatened that others are able, are good. They are self-assured, knowing that they belong in a greater whole. A greater whole. What we do is important, and it's important to give it time. You are blessed by this sacred circle, which we form to end our Sunday morning worship and to seal the covenant we keep with one another. You are blessed by a sacred and transcendent love, a love that stirs deep within, a love that flows among all of us here. A love that reaches far beyond our sacred circle. Go in peace and bless others with your love. Blessed be.